Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's Room of Choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Talk to Living podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Bolton, joined by Sergeant Bolton. Clint, how are you?
I'm good.
You know, a lot of first responder families don't realize the secondary trauma or the vicarious trauma that's taking place in the lives of the people that they care about the most. And something that I've been thinking about lately is it's not just first responder families. I'm thinking about an individual who for the past several years had so much trauma take place in their lives, in particular as it related to their place of work, that I feel like their spouse has taken on that trauma more than that initial individual has. And it's completely impacted their lives and their family and their marriage. And I think it's important to talk about it.
Yeah, when you start having those conversations with one another, it's when you're holding on to those emotions and feelings associated to whatever that trauma is, whether it's the secondhand trauma or it's you as an individual holding on to that trauma, it's not healthy for either of you to be able to to hold on to that.
So there's different aspects of this, right? Secondary or vicarious trauma. It can happen when a spouse who works as a first responder, for example, comes home and they share a story about all of the terrible things on that call. So traumatic and just so vile, and something that's literally incomprehensible to the person that you're sharing this story with because they don't have that training experience and they weren't there. And so there could be that aspect of it, right? You're literally sharing the thing, and then because the person you love is witnessing you share the experience that you had because of this terrible thing, they too are taking in some of that trauma. But another aspect of this is that you, whether you share it with your spouse or not, are coming home and you're not doing what needs to be done in order to be able to process through all of the shit. And so you, for lack of better terms, are acting out and you're exhibiting signs that are really trauma signs. And you might be lashing out on your family. You might be volatile. You might be not wanting to be engaged in your family activities, like whatever the things are that you're experiencing personally. That too can have a trickle-down effect on your spouse or your kids or the people that you love.
Yeah, when you're relaying a message in a certain way and you're explaining this incident and this by any means doesn't mean don't go home and share stories and not do that. It's one, it's in how you relay that messaging, but two, it's developing kind of that emotional relationship associated to it, to what you should share and shouldn't share. And I think a lot of times I could come home and tell a story and I leave out a lot of details with it, but it's like, oh, well, you have to fill in the blanks from here, because then our brains start actively building into that more and more, and you start getting that vicarious trauma associated to it.
Something I see in individuals that are struggling with this is that they might have anxiety about their first responder safety, and it never fully goes away, or they're absorbing that emotional tone of the home basically after any difficult shift. Or children develop a lot of anxiety or even behavioral changes that are connected to apparent stress.
When we are as individuals stressed out, people feed off of other people's energies, and meaning if you're coming out and stressed and angry and upset all the time, I think that we're unintentionally sharing that amongst our family, and we want to be able to come come home and show up and be fully present for them. And that's where, when we start holding on to this individualized trauma and not being able to find those healthy outlets for ourselves, we start putting that burden onto our family members.
You know, we've talked a lot about how I see these first responder spouses, usually females, usually the wives, who they have nothing of their own. And so the only thing that they have to basically involve themselves in is their husband's careers. And that can become so unhealthy. And it oftentimes leads to things like divorces, because they have this sense of personal identity outside of the role of a supportive spouse or parent, because it's almost like they're embracing that role as their own, or they start acting or talking like they too are a first responder when they're not. And it's a lot of times because they have nothing else to belong to, right? They have their role as maybe mom or wife, but they a lot of times don't have their own gig. And so their mind is, trying to grasp at anything that it can, because we're all about pattern recognition. So what is it that is top of mind and most important? And on a primal level, we think that, this is the threat, right? Something to do with my spouse is the threat. This is what I need to fixate on. And if you don't have anything else in order to be able to kind of diversify those thoughts and to ease that tension, then it can become so unhealthy.
And I'm sitting here listening to you, and this story came up for me, and I was thinking about, I'm like, yeah, that seems about right. And it goes back to, we had gone to a special event somewhere, and I had to work it, and you were going to go hang out with this new group of people that were kind of all tied into law enforcement. It's a whole bunch of police wives, and they have an organization associated to it. And you go over and start talking to them, and oh no, I think I'm combining two stories, but this is still the general basis of the story. Is you have all these women there saying, oh, well, my husband does this. He's an officer, but he's in this detail. My husband's a detective. And you start seeing basing their own status in this little group of people of their husband's rank, and identifying as, well, who's the leader in this group. And seeing that, it makes me laugh, because your response to it is just like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, and luckily I had that experience at the beginning of mine and your marriage, right? Because it allowed me to be able to see, like, oh, so this is a behavior trait for other wives who are married to police officers. This was actually very educational for me. Of course, I never partook in something like that ever again, and then realized very quickly that, the police wife genre is not where I want to focus my attention when it comes to how I want to serve this community. And that's not to judge, that's not to bash, that's just to state an obvious that perhaps a lot of people aren't speaking up on, because that truth can be a little burning, I think, when you come to realize that you too are partaking in it. And it's important to make sure that you're doing things to protect your family and your well-being, because this type of trauma, it's very real. And I think that a lot of times it can perpetuate in the household in ways that it can make your own trauma that you're experiencing as a first responder kind of feel a little bit less than, or like you need to put it off to the side, because now you have to go and deal with things in the home. And that too can make things even more unhealthy.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's so important to have like that mindset shift on your way home from work, or getting to a spot of where you can leave work at work and keep home at home. And of course, those lives do intermingle to a degree, but not bringing home the burden and holding on to that burden because you don't have those avenues of being able to express it leading up to that point. And
you have to know the mentality of the person that you're choosing to share certain things with as well. Like there are a lot of times where I might have to ask you, Clint, like, hey, put the filter on. And you don't realize you're just like da-da-da-da-da and like letting the word vomiting come out. And for me, it's a lot easier, I think, of the two of us to recognize when some filters like that need to be turned on. And your mother is an example, because I know that if you share a little bit too much, you're just going to set her off. And sometimes as the bratty child, you may choose to do that on purpose. And so that's usually when I kind of elbow you.
Yeah, I'm thinking of it as like, here's all your filters and what you need to, as you're articulating a story. When I'm telling a story to my mom, I have to check all of them. and it's knowing that, because when we're not applying those filters in those instances, it's creating it ultimately what it comes down to is what you said is the safety aspect of it, and that fear. It's the fear of the unknown associated to it, and they're not always going to have that understanding of your true capabilities, and there's always going to be that worry.
I think too is to just validate the feelings and experience of the person who might be experiencing this secondhand trauma is also really important, because to you, it might not seem like that big of deal. And to them, it's literally their entire essence of their being in that moment, especially. So, it's not an overreaction, and it can actually be recognized as a psychological response.
Yeah, when you start recognizing the different cues and you tune into not only your response to things, but you're starting to apply those filters on when you need to and when you don't. It's having that knowledge, having that experience to be able to articulate it in such a way to where it's not as abrasive as it could be.
And as a spouse, I think a lot of times we fail at this, but spouses and family members actually need their own outlets and not just access to their partner's resources. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.